Evinrude motor and Minn Kota troller and Lowrance fish finder or two. We push off the dock just before 5 o'clock and go sailing off into the blue.
You're back in with Northwestern Outdoors Radio. I'm John Cruz. We're broadcasting from another sportsman show, and this time we're checking in with Captain Bob Wiley. He is with Pend Oreille Charters. They fish Lake Pend Oreille near Sandpoint in the Idaho Panhandle, way up north in the state of Idaho, and there's some awfully good fishing at this big lake. Bob, welcome to the show.
Thank you, John. Good to be here.
For folks that don't know, let's talk about just how big of a body of water Lake Pend Oreille is and how deep it is, too.
Well, John, Pend Oreille Lake is 176 miles of shoreline, and it's at its deepest point 1,207 feet deep. The Navy uses it for sonar testing down on the southern end of the lake because of its clarity and its deep water aspects.
Let's talk about fishing a big, deep lake like this. This isn't exactly tossing a red and white bobber out with a worm 3 feet underneath. You're doing things really deep. I'm guessing you're doing mainly trolling when it comes to the cold water fish you find here.
That's correct, John. We do several different styles of fishing on the main lake. For the rainbows and the lake trout, we're using downrigger trolling methods and planer board surface line methods. And that varies between the seasons. In the warm water seasons, we go deep. In the spring and winter, we're up on the top on the shallow water.
Well, there's actually 4 different fish species that you fish for through Pend Oreille Charters. So let's go ahead and break it down one by one. Your most popular rainbow trout and a special strain of rainbow trout, too.
Pend Oreille Lake probably is best known for its Girard rainbow, otherwise known as the Kamloops rainbow. It was brought in back in the late 30s, early 40s from Kootenay Lake up in Canada. It's world record pure strain rainbow, 38 pounds plus. And that's the big draw to Lake Pend Oreille is the big rainbows.
What are the limits, and what does an average fish look like that you get to the boat when it comes to these Girard rainbows?
Well, I think they're one of the prettiest fishes around. They're bright chrome with a red stripe, green back. Typical size is 10 to 15 pounds on average, I would say. Obviously, world record is 38 pounds. We get 20-plus pound rainbows quite frequently.
Wow. And so I presume your clients are taking these fish home, or is it catch and release?
No, we promote catch and release, but we also believe in harvest as a responsible harvest is a good thing for the conservation of the lake as well. So each angler, licensed angler, is allowed to keep 2 rainbows per day per angler, only one over 20 inches.
So the rainbows, you're not going really deep for these, I'm guessing, or is it just a matter of finding the thermocline and depending on the time of year, how deep you're going to go? But let's talk about the lake trout, because they do like to go deep. Probably not 1,200 feet deep, but they do like to go deep. What does that fishery look like?
Well, the lake trout was introduced into Pend Oreille, and it really exploded about 15 to 20 years ago. And Fish and Game really doesn't want the lake trout in the lake. They've been netting those out for about the last 12 years. But we have a good population. There was a 35-pound lake trout caught last summer, so we still have a good population of lake trout. They typically stay in that water temperature, about the 43-degree temperature range. They like to be deep, around 100 to 120 feet deep.
How do you fish for them? Because I have noticed that when it comes to lake trout, there's different methods for different lakes, and I'm guessing you probably got a different twist at yours too.
Yeah, it's kind of funny how I talk to a lot of the guys that are over here at Chelan or some of the guys up at Priest Lake over in our neck of the woods, and we all do things just a little bit different. So we do a lot of slow trolling deep, like I said, about 120 feet deep. But the one thing that is in common is we want to stay in contact with the bottom pretty much all the time when we're fishing for the Mackinac.
Any specific lures, any specific colors that seem to work at Pend Oreille Lake that are just kind of special to that body of water?
Black and white and anything that's kind of shiny is a real good ticket. Blue and chrome is another real good ticket.
So are you actually fishing plugs or are you fishing spinners when you're going for the Lakers?
We fish mostly plugs for our Lakers. We'll use the quick fish and Lyman-style plugs, a little bit of Rapala type action as well.
Like I said, folks, different methods. Every lake. That's the funny thing about lake trout. You're listening to Northwestern Outdoors Radio. We're talking to Captain Bob Wiley. He's with Pend Oreille Charters out of Sandpoint and Hope, Idaho. And we've talked about the cold water species, but we shouldn't ignore some very good warm water fisheries that are there as well. As a matter of fact, I just read there are literally $50,000 worth of walleye swimming around Pend Oreille Lake right now. Tell our listeners about this opportunity.
Yeah, John. Well, actually, the walleye in our lake has been there, that I know of, about 15 years. They came in unwelcomely introduced.
A bucket biologist.
There you go. They have a tendency to change fisheries. Our fishing game don't want the walleyes in the lake, so they have been netting for the last 3 years, trying to do a study of numbers. And in the process, they've done some tagging that they've offered some bounties on now. So we have a lot of walleye in there, 10-plus pounds.
And let me explain this tagging, folks. These are very small tags, but if you catch a walleye, you'll want to turn it in, because if it has a tag in it, it's worth $1,000, and 50 of them were released in the lake. Now, it is a big lake, but if you're looking for extra incentive to go walleye fishing, besides the great taste of these fish, $1,000 isn't a bad incentive. Catch a couple, catch 3 or 4, you're in some serious money there. So that sounds fun, but even though walleye are not desired in Lake Pend Oreille, smallmouth bass, that has developed into a great fishery at Lake Pend Oreille. I don't think too many people realize that.
That's right, John. I think it's an underexplored fishery right now. There's a number of guys that are out there fishing it for sure. We have a young man, professional bass fisherman on our team. He's been fishing it for a number of years and winning tournaments there. 4 to 6 pound smallies are quite common in our waterways.
I don't suppose his name is Brandon Polinack.
No, we have Clay Williams. He's a young gentleman, but he won the Idaho State Championship last year. So we're real happy to have him on board on our team, and he'll be fishing the Pend Oreille River system, and it's just chock full of smallies, and the lake's got smallies in them around the shoreline. We have rocky shoreline, cold water. The smallmouth bass love it.
I'll be the first to admit, I really enjoy catching smallmouth bass. But again, there's different methods to use in different areas. Now, Pend Oreille Lake is known as a lake with really clear water, and that kind of changes things. I'm guessing a lot of times those bass are deeper than you're going to find in stained water, and how you're getting them is probably a little bit different too. So is your guide using a lot of drop shotting techniques, or how's he going about it?
Again, we can run into all the different water colors. We have some stained water in the spring, so we're going to chase that tactic. But he does quite a bit of drop shotting, do a lot of casts. We have plugs and tube baits. So he's going to tailor to his water stain, but we're really clear. And you're right. When we get into that clear water pattern, we're going to be a little deeper, chasing them deeper, working the deeper rock piles and sets off the points.
One question I've always learned to ask when it comes to smallmouth bass fishing and the fisheries is the size of the fish, because I've been to some, world-class fisheries where you can catch 100 bass a day, but what they don't tell you is about 95 of those bass are going to be 6 inches long. What's the average bass at Lake Pend Oreille and in the Pend Oreille River system?
Well, as in any waterway, the big girls seem to find a spot to hide, and there's areas you'll catch a lot of 6 to 8 inch smallies for sure.
Never let it be said we're not truthful here on Northwestern Outdoors Radio. However, there are some big ones in the mix too. I understand 4 or 5 plus pounders.
Yeah, absolutely. Clay believes that he can put anybody on a 4 to 6 pound smallie on a daily basis regularly. So,
and folks, a 4 to 6 pound smallie will make my day any day. We've got to go. But before we do, let's give out a website so folks can go fishing with you and the other guides that run Pend Oreille Charters out of Sandpoint and Hope, Idaho.
Our website is POCharters.com.
That's POCharters.com. POCharters.com for Pend Oreille Charters. All sorts of fishing opportunities, whether you're after big rainbow trout, big lake trout, maybe $1,000 walleye, or a whole bunch of bass. Lake Pend Oreille in the northern Idaho Panhandle is a good bet, and Pend Oreille Charters, they'll get you into those fish. Thanks so much, Bob. Appreciate you sharing this with us today on Northwestern Outdoors Radio.
Thank you, John. It's been a lot of fun.
This must be the reason why I miss fishing more than I miss you.
Wake up to winter in Wallowa County. Grab your camera and don your skis for some Nordic skiing adventure at Salt Creek Summit or Wallowa Lake. Or spend the day on the family-friendly slopes of Fergie Ridge. Or slip into a set of skates and enjoy some time on the ice at our outdoor ice rink. Need to warm up? Then grab a cup of coffee or hot chocolate at one of our fine coffee and confectionery shops. And when evening comes, enjoy some of Wallowa County's fine dining and gaze at the stars before you dream of tomorrow's adventures. Your winter adventure begins at www.wallawacountychamber.com.